Welcome everybody, I'm Dale from Stumbling Greenward. Today is International Passive House Day, and through the course of the day, I have been interviewing passive house professionals, people involved in the trade, and this time we get to interview Michele Funk. Michele has managed the Alberta division of Euroline Windows for the past 7 years, and then while she still looks after the dealers, she's moved back home to the coast. And she's here today to tell us all about windows and what makes a passive house window different, and things that we should be looking for as home owners and buyers when we're actually looking at purchasing new windows for our homes, or what makes the difference of the windows in the homes we're already in. So just welcome, Michele.
Thank you, Dale. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I see in the back you've got a window there.
I do.
And a large TV. I'm not sure if that's a passive house TV or not, but
no.
If you could maybe just start us off, take us through the parts of the window. So during the course of our conversation, if you talk about a piece of the window, we'll already have an idea of what that is.
Absolutely, and that's what I've got the window for. So if I need to point to anything, I have it right here. But just the basics. You start out with the frame. So the frame is this part that gets installed into the wall. And then we have here the sash. So the sash is the part of the window that you actually open and close. And inside the sash here, not sure how well you can see that, we have the hardware. And you also have hardware inside the frame. You can't see that there. I'm not sure if you can see the top. Here we have a locking point. So this hardware, both in the frame, hardware in the sash as well. And that's already the main parts of a window, except of course for the glass, which is in the center.
Perfect. All right. And then so this style of window is called a tilt and turn?
That's fine.
Okay. So maybe just if you want to show the tilt function while we're here.
Sure. So when you turn the handle all the way to the top and then pull the window in, that's when it tilts. I'm just going to turn it to the side so we can see that a little better. There we go. So then it's tilted in. Then you push it back in, turn the handle sideways, and then you have the turn, which is for easy cleaning, whereas the tilt is for ventilation mainly.
So where you're standing, that's the interior of the window. So the windows, yes. The tilt and turn opens into the dwelling.
That's right. You wouldn't want the handle on the outside for anybody to let themselves in.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You got me there. So what other styles of windows exist then? This is a tilt and turn, but I know I've seen different ones in houses. So what other types of windows are there when we're looking?
Well, the main window types would be, especially in North America, sliding windows, so either sliding side to side or hung windows that slide up and down. And the other style windows is casement and awning windows, where you have a crank handle that you crank to the outside. So the sash opens to the outside, either from the side or from the bottom. And then, of course, the tilt and turn. Something you see less often is a push-out window. So that type window has a handle similar to the tilt and turn. You turn it, but then you push the window to the outside rather than opening it in. Fantastic.
Okay. And Euroline predominantly makes tilt and turn, or only makes tilt and turn, or what?
We specialize in tilt and turn, which is why we've named the company Euroline. Actually started out as A&G Window Tech, which we didn't think quite described what we do. But we also do quite a few casement and awning windows. So we try to do windows only that are energy efficient. So we would not carry any sliding windows. But casement windows, awning windows are fairly good in that sense. So we do those as well as the tilt and turns.
Okay, and maybe while we're just on that subject, can you explain why a sliding window might not be as energy efficient?
Sure. A sliding window, you just have a track basically that the sash sits in. And so in order to open it, you're sliding it in that track. You're not coming out of a frame in any sort of shape or form. So that means that if you had a tight seal, really you wouldn't be able to move that sash because it would be so tight inside the frame. So if you have a sliding window that slides nicely and easily, that means you don't have a very good seal because you're able to move it easily inside the frame.
Okay, so it's so from an airtightness point of view, it's not that efficient, and
Right.
as well as energy efficient then as well for insulative properties.
Yes, energy efficient for insulating properties as well as for air and water infiltration as well.
Okay, perfect. So what prompted Euroline to start making a Passive House compliant window?
Well, we've always been looking for the most efficient window type, which is why we, are doing the tilt and turn windows. And so for us, it was only natural when passive started to become more predominant building style in Europe, especially, to adapt that sort of system. You want to be comfortable in your house, and you want to make sure that you're not wasting energy. So the more efficient your window, the more efficient your home is going to be, because most of the energy you do lose through the windows in a house and through your attic.
Perfect. And I realize that I've been starting all the show with one question, and I didn't start it with you. So I'm going to back up a little bit. If somebody asks you, what in the world is Passive House, what is your answer for them?
My answer to what is Passive House is Passive House is basically a house that does not require mechanical heating or cooling. So it should be able to warm itself just through inert energy like body heats, cooking, any heat that you get from the shower. And for cooling, you should be able to also vent it mechanically. So with the tilt function, for example, you can get good air exchange. And so Passive House, of course, has to be efficient. You have to look at the numbers. If we're going to get technical, then the Passive House Institute has several requirements for what meets a passive house or not. But I think that doesn't so much apply to windows. So,
well,
it does, for sure. Yeah, you have to meet 0.8 meters square Kelvin. So obviously there are numbers there as well.
And beyond the scope of what I'm looking to cover today in the interview, absolutely. So,
yes.
What elements of your because you're already making a tilt and turn window. So what elements specifically did you modify? Because I imagine that if we look at a tilt and turn compared to your Passive House tilt and turn, there might visually not be a lot of difference. So can you explain what had to be modified to make the window Passive House compliant?
Sure, absolutely. And I actually have a nice corner sample here as well. Let's see if I can get that nice and close to the camera. So if you look at these, the system, the profile, you can see that we have different chambers here inside the profile. And the way that you want to count chambers is always across from inside to outside. So you're not counting every little chamber that's here. So what we had to do compared to our standard tilt and turn window is we added one more chamber. So now we have 6 chambers. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And every chamber gives you insulation, really, because it's a thermal break. And then we also have these thermal modules in here in the frame as well as in the sash and in the corners over here as well. So that adds a little bit more insulation. Of course, you have to go with triple pane glass. And we also have in here a super spacer. I'm not sure how well you can see that. So this is a foam spacer, which means that it does not create a thermal bridge like you would with aluminum or a steel spacer, where it allows the heat to pass through the spacer and then from the inside usually out, of course, where it's colder. And also, something you don't really see, I guess, is that we don't have steel reinforcement in this window. And that's because it's a vinyl fiberglass hybrid. So the fiberglass gives the profile the strength that it needs for structural integrity. And that eliminates another thermal bridge with the steel. So those are the main changes from the other tilt and turn.
So with the extra pane of glass, that obviously adds some weight then to the frame, and that's why would your normal, like a 2-pane window, does it normally have a steel insert in there for strength?
Yes, we steel reinforce all our windows actually. And that's because vinyl does expand and contract. So in order to keep that to a minimum, or to keep it to as little as possible, you reinforce inside the frame and the sash, as well as the mullions. So the reason why we don't need it here is just the reinforcement that we have with the fiberglass. It's not related to how many panes of glass are in the window. So we can do this one in a double pane as well, or we can do our non-passive house in a triple pane as well.
Okay. I know when I spoke to Scott Kennedy earlier, he was talking about even colder climates, the possibility of a quad window. Is that something that you guys entertain or can build?
Sure, that's absolutely something we can do. Actually, let me just bring this back. So you can see on this side here, this is where we have our glass top. And the only thing you really have to do is use a slimmer one so that you can make a bigger gap for the glass, which means that you could have a fourth pane in here as well. It's
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, at the moment, we think that for most markets, it's probably overkill. But, you know, if you do have a very cold climate where you need to add that extra pane of glass, then that's certainly something we can do.
Okay. And I noticed that the gap between your panes of glass is fairly wide. Does that have anything to do with the insulative like, I know that they fill it with gases and stuff, but does the gap actually, like if you had 4 pieces of glass all touching, probably creates a thermal bridge, but does the size of the gap between the glass make a difference as well?
It does, actually. So there's an optimum air gap that you have, which is at or around 1/2 inch. So that is pretty much what we have here. If you have a gap that is smaller or even larger, then you get a convection effect inside the glass, and that prevents, or it does not insulate as well, really, and you have some other issues there. So you want to keep to an optimum of around 1/2 inch. There are quite a few window companies that cannot modify their profiles. Actually, fiberglass windows have that problem because of the way the frame is extruded. They're not as flexible, and so they might not be able to have a larger glazing gap in there, which means that they'll end up telling customers, you know, triple glazing really is not more efficient than double glazing, which in their case is not a lie because they do not have an air gap in between the panes, really. So it's not giving them any extra insulation.
Okay, so that's, as a consumer of windows, it's important to not only know that there's a certain amount of panes of glass, but that the space in between, as well as the spacer, all contributes to the efficiency of the window.
Exactly. So you're looking for a gap of between 3/8 of an inch to 5/8 of an inch, approximately.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. And then, so I know that the International Passive House Association certifies products. Is your window International Passive House certified?
Our window is not. We're actually in the process of getting it certified, but the profiles or the frames are certified components. So Rayhow, who is our supplier for the profiles, has gotten the certification done for. So this is the sash and the frame over here. Those are the profiles, and they are certified components by the International Passive House Association or Institute.
So it's just a matter of sending them over, and they work their magic tests on them to check that they're
That's
okay.
right. It's a matter of us putting the window together at the correct size, shipping it over to Germany. We have actually done testing on our windows over in Austria, not in Germany, but at a institute in Austria. And so we have got the testing done, just not at the right place. It's a little bit expensive to get it certified and then maintain the certification, but we're doing it.
Absolutely. And I guess for, as we talk about certification, I know there's a lot of windows available maybe to get to North America, but when we're presented with an option of an imported window, is there anything that we need to know? Like, is it, I know with electrical stuff, it's CSA approved. Is there a similar body for windows? And can you explain what that is and if you guys are certified by that body?
Yes. So as a manufacturer in Canada, we are certified. So there's NAF certification, which is basically the standards that you have to meet to sell your product here in North America. And it's a good question about certification and whether imported windows meet those certifications as well. We're certainly seeing a lot of imported windows that do have their product tested and so are able to sell it here legally. But there are also some other companies that are importing windows and do not have them certified. And the problems that they might be running into in getting them certified is actually that, surprisingly, European standards are what I would call a little bit lower than North American standards. They do allow the use of heavy metals, such as lead, inside their products. So you might find window frames in Europe that contain lead, which is not allowed in North America for, I think, fairly obvious reasons. So another thing is that the climate is quite different here. We actually have much higher radiation in North America than they do have in Europe. And so the formulation of the vinyl or the UPVC that we're using has to be different. And that's another thing, that if you're just importing a window from Europe, you know, it'll look the same basically, but the formulation will be different. And so it may not perform as well here in North America because of the radiation that we have.
So when you say perform, do you mean like thermal performance, or it'll degrade over time, or what?
Yes.
What are we looking at?
Yes, in this case, I'm talking about degrading over time because the radiation does affect the materials. So you might find that they have more fillers or different fillers that do not stand up to our climate here as well. And you might find that the frames are chalking because they have a lower content of, I'm going to skip this one because I'm not going to pronounce it right.
Okay, so chalking would be
chemical compounds.
Fair enough. And chalking is over time where plastic, if you rub your hand on it, it kind of comes off. Is that what you're describing there?
It becomes kind of chalky, actually. So the color might fade more easily, and the chalk that's basically contained in that UPVC is coming to the surface. So you will get a powdery finish on it instead of the smooth finish that you get on vinyl usually.
Okay. So I guess the governing body in Canada is, what did you say? It's the NAF?
NAFs, yes. So there's also the NFRC, and you have to meet all the standards that they set.
And that's the NAFC, so for fenestration, is that correct?
And North American Fenestration Association.
NAFA?
Yours?
I'm not.
Council? You're gonna edit that later, right?
Oh no. But so yeah, the NAF part's important.
It's NAFs. I just don't know. It's NAFS, and I just can't come up with the acronym right now.
All right. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
But that's the governing body that looks after the windows in Canada that you guys conform to. So that's great.
Yeah, and in North America.
So with your windows, if we go back to types, do you do retrofit windows as well, or are you solely a new home construction provider?
We do mostly windows for new construction, but we also do quite a bit of renovation. So basically, you just use the same window. You can say the way that we have installed it here inside the butt is actually with a drill frame installation. So we have screwed through the frame, and that's how you can install the windows, just by screwing straight through the frame into the framing. We also provide strap anchors, which I don't believe I have on my sample here, but with strap anchors you can also install straight into the framing as well. So you don't need the nailing fin, which is the only difference really between a new construction window and a renovation window, is that you would cut off the nailing fin.
And actually on my home, I know they took the nailing flange off the engineer, and the engineer insisted that it came off, partly I think for bridging and stuff. So
In passive house construction, of course, it's not the typical North American construction where you have a 2x6 wall, right? You have a much thicker wall. So ideally, you do want to place the window more towards the center of the wall, where it is more protected from the elements and actually gives you better performance, thermal performance. So that's why you would cut off the nailing fin, because you're placing it in the center of the wall and not just flush with the outside of the wall.
Perfect. All right. So if a consumer is looking to buy new windows, passive house or other, what are sort of the high level, easy to remember points they should be looking at when they buy a window?
Well, I think one of the things you want to see is when you're opening and closing the window, is it really giving you a tight seal, or, is it just opening and closing quite easily and you can see some daylight coming through, something along those lines? That's not good. So you want to make sure that you have some compression gaskets that are actually sealing close against the frame and the sash. And that would be, for example, if I look here, you can see there's a black line over here that just compresses right up against the frame. We have the same thing again on the frame that compresses against the sash. And so that gives you a tight seal where you don't have water leakage or air leakage. It's going to keep your heat inside. Another thing you want to look out, speaking about heat, is the glass. You want to make sure that you choose good glass that has a low E coating and argon fill as well, which should be standard these days, really. But you can still, some people try to get away saving a little bit of extra money. So you can request different styles of glass in the profile, and so is that like you guys could help guide that, I guess, depending on the needs of the consumer. But is that I pick type A glass and all 3 panes or 2 panes would be A, or you can mix and match to get different sort of performance? Yes, you absolutely would mix and match. The standard glass that you'll find in most windows is in a double pane window in any case, is one coating of a low E soft. A low E soft helps to insulate better, so you have less solar heat gain, but you actually radiate more of your heat from inside the house back inside the house. You can also get a low E hard coating that gives you a higher solar heat gain coefficient, which in a passive house you might want, especially on the south side and the west side where you get a lot of the sun. And that helps, again, with the solar heating of your home as well, right? So I know you have some large windows in your house, and that's, I guess, what you would have been looking on that side, whereas on the north side, typically you just want to insulate. And so you would be using a triple glaze with just low E soft coatings. You can have all kinds of different coatings. So there's 270, there's E366, which is one of the better coatings. You can get an I89, you can get a 180, and you can combine them in all kinds of different ways to achieve exactly the performance that you're looking for.
And all those coatings you listed, I won't hold you to task on what each one does, but essentially it regulates the amount of heat coming in and the amount of heat that can get out.
It regulates. Yes, it regulates how much heat is being reflected back into your house, how much heat gets through the glass, and I think those are the two main criteria there. Of course, it does affect also as well how much light comes into your house as well.
Perfect, and we love light. We love the light in our house, but
we do.
It's amazing how it changes everything. You don't need to run as many lights, and
yes,
and it's fantastic to get that kind of daylight. So, but speaking of that, I mean, my windows are huge, and I can only imagine. We talked about triple pane being super heavy. I've got a French door with 2 side lights, and then I've got another one that's even bigger with 2 operable ends. I mean, those things have got to be very heavy. I wasn't home when they got them in. Do they arrive all in one piece, or do they do some site assembly, or how in the world did they manage to get those in?
Right. Well, it depends a little bit on the location as well as the overall size of the unit. A lot of the time with the doors, for example, the sash will not be installed. So it will be the frame by itself, and then the sashes are always hung after the frame is installed, so that takes some of the weight out. On a large unit like that, you're easily looking at 300 kilograms, something along those lines. So they're definitely heavy with the steel reinforcement, the triple glazing and everything. Sometimes we do side glazing as well. So especially if it's not a door, you know, it's just a number of picture windows, or just one really large picture window, you might just install the frame by itself. You don't want to have to lift it up and install it with the glass in there. That's going to break a few backs. So you would just install the frame and then glaze it later. Actually, the glazing is done on the inside on our windows, so it's quite simple to take out the glazing bead, pop in the glass. We don't have to silicone it. We just put the glass in, put the glazing beads back in, and that's done. And if you have really large windows, which we do quite a few of as well, especially in the West Vancouver area or Vancouver West, you might have to connect the units on site. So you ship them in pieces, and then our installers will put them together right on the sides.
Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're getting just about to the time where we're going to open it up to the floor. So is there, actually, I'll ask you first. Is there any learning lessons that you guys as a window company have gone through with regards to Passive House that that you'd like to share, or you know, things you wish you'd have done sooner, earlier, or things that you've things that you figured out that you've started to incorporate from now moving forward, like lessons learned?
Okay, that's a good question. I think one of the lessons might be that, you know, you want to work with the customer as much as possible, and it's more important to work with them even more so than on other projects, because they usually have a Passive House designer involved as well. And so while usually, you know, we'll be telling customers, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, I think actually on Passive House, it's more important to work together with the designer as well, because you might be telling them, you know, you don't want to have any solar heat gain, you're going to be cooking in the summer. Meanwhile, that's really what you want, right? And then you want to just talk to the designer and make sure they understand how hot it can get with the high solar heat gain window. And that you want to make sure you have overhangs and those kinds of things. So I think it's just, there's a lot more cooperation required on Passive House than on a regular project, where of course cooperation is still important as well. But I think that would probably be my main thing that we've learned.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I guess that's, you just incorporate that in moving forward. You make sure that you're more active in as sort of a check system.
And I mean, as you experienced yourself, it's you know, it's fairly new. We've been in the Passive House market for a couple of years now, but it's not the main building style yet. So we're always learning. Our sales consultants are always learning, and I think probably we're all learning together a lot of the time.
Well, maybe Brian is secretly watching out there. Give him a shout out. But he was my sales consultant. He was more than accommodating to answer my questions. And if he didn't know, he certainly was happy to find out. So
yes. Well, I think that's exactly what we need to do, is just be upfront if we don't know and find out. So I think we've, you know, gathered quite a bit of experience, Brian included. Yeah,
no, he did have it. I'm not saying he didn't have answers to any questions.
I understand.
So was there anything else that I didn't cover today that you wanted to talk about with regards to Windows?
No, not really. I mean, there's a question on the site that I wouldn't mind answering. He's asking, are you guys really blabbing out about Windows? Yes, we are.
That's what you do on a Saturday.
Yeah. What else would you do on a Saturday afternoon other than blab about Windows? And so I think Windows are important, but it brings up that people don't put enough emphasis or thought into their Windows. They think, you know, I'll just buy some Windows and they'll do the job, and I'll spend all that money on stainless steel appliances, which, you know, you'd be much better off investing into Windows first, because if you're replacing them 2 years down the line, that's going to be quite a bit more expensive than replacing your appliances.
Yeah, And I know, especially with ours being a passive house, they're integral to the envelope. Like they needed to come in so that we could seal to them to make our airtight layer and stuff. So the thought of having to switch out a window or replace it now was just unfathomable, really.
Yes.
But I do see we have one more question here. Styro Home asks, will you offer shutters for your windows?
Well, we do offer roll shutters for windows. So that's the European external shutter that, rolls up and down sort of like a curtain. We do not offer the kind of swing shutters that you might see on other houses that are installed on the outside and just swing open and close.
Okay.
Not sure if that answers his questions.
Does anybody else in the audience have any questions that they'd like answered with regards to windows?
Oh, I see there's a comment at the top, actually. It says, I have installed all of my own windows with foam only, no screws whatsoever. They are awesome. So actually, you can just install the windows without any screws and just with low expanding foam. However, we do recommend, because they are very heavy, that you do use the strap anchors. You don't need to screw through the window. Just use the strap anchors and then still use the foam, which really helps to support the window as well. But it makes your life a lot easier to use the strap anchors because it helps you to hold it in place while you're foaming out around it.
And when you screw in the window, do you use, this is maybe getting a little bit technical, but I believe stainless steel has a lower thermal transfer. Do you use stainless steel screws or? I'm
afraid I would not be the right person for this question. I have not installed a window yet.
No problem. That's fine. I do see that Cameron has a great question, and he wants to know if there's other colors besides white, and that was part of the reason for me wanting to have you on, is because I think a lot of people that's maybe how they choose their windows is. What color does it come in? How will it suit our house? So if you could speak to the colors of your frames or windows.
Sure. So for our 4700 series, which is our passive house window, the frame only comes extruded in white. What we do, however, is we add foils, acrylic foils on the exterior or on the interior or on both sides. And that gives you a different color on it. So I'm going to pick up my little sample here. So you can see here it's extruded in white, but on the outside we have added a foil. So you can see that it's extruded in white and then just the outside has that foil cover. And so that's available in about 100 colors that you can choose from, either solid colors, metallic colors, Euro wood finishes, which look like wood, but you don't have the maintenance of the wood. So that's a nice benefit. And then for our other lines, we also extrude them in beige and in clay. So there's a lot of different colors. If you're getting a wood window, of course, you can stain it any color you want. If you're getting an aluminum window, you can powder coat it just about any color you want. We don't recommend painting vinyl windows. The paint does chip and scratch more easily than adding a foil. So that's something to consider as well, is if you're looking at a vinyl window, maybe don't get it painted.
So, and I see you're answering Cameron's other question about foils. Are they more durable than paints that you would see on vinyl windows? And I'd just like to add, could you maybe explain what a foil is? Like, is it a sticker, or is it what is a foil?
It's an acrylic foil that we put on with a primer and a glue. So it's, unfortunately, I didn't bring a color booklet to show you what it actually looks like, but it's a thin acrylic sheet, really, that we cut to size to fit around the corners of the frame that we're foiling. And then we run it through our foiling machine. We add some primer and then some hot glue, and then we push the foil on top of it. And that's what it is. Unfortunately, you'll have to come here and see how it's done.
And I know you're not kidding, because I do know before before I had signed up to use you guys, Brian had me to the plant, and I actually did get the tour.
Absolutely. Anybody's welcome to come down and get a tour.
Beautiful. And so the foil, it has some magnitude in it, like it's thicker. It is somewhat scratch resistant.
Well, it depends a little bit as well on the type of finish that's on the foil. The smoother the finish, the more easily it will scratch. So a lot of our foils have what we call a wood ticking. It looks a little bit like a wood grain, and that gives it more texture so it doesn't scratch as easily. You can certainly take a key and scratch it up. I mean, anything that you take a sharp object to is going to scratch. It just makes it more scratch resistant. If you do ever end up scratching a foil product, you can touch it up with a touch-up pen, so it's, not that bad. I see there's another question over here. Yeah, somebody painted windows on their own house and don't care for how easily it scratches. So, I mean, it does depend a lot on if you have pets, as well, how easily it's going to scratch. But definitely a foil should be more resistant than a painted vinyl window.
Perfect. All right. If there's any other questions, get them in the window. Otherwise, I think we're going to wrap up. I'm just going to take a minute to give a plug for my next show. First, certainly, I want to thank Michele for spending part of her Saturday to come on and share with us about Windows.
For sure, we love blogging about Windows.
Well, that's fantastic. Certainly, information and better than I could give. Sort of homeowner what I learned buying them. But absolutely, if we can get them from the source, that's the best way, and to be able to share it. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Stumbling Greenward podcast. You can access links to all the resources that were mentioned in this podcast at stumblinggreenward.com/podcast and clicking on this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I recommend you check out some of the other podcasts, including jargon-free interviews on Windows, multi-unit construction, passive house development, and much more. Before you go, I'd be eternally grateful if you were to share this interview with others, and be sure to click subscribe on iTunes. Thanks, and have a great day.